Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you said the plenary will be on recess. Our army is executing 2 wars in DRC and in South Sudan. And the reports keep coming through the media, including the most unfortunate one that we lost a colonel who was part of the fighting in DRC. But there are also reports in the international media accusing Uganda of using chemicals in South Sudan. You may have seen the video circulating. The procedural issue I am raising, Mr. Speaker, is when will you facilitate the government to brief Parliament and the country on these wars? Because we cannot, as representative of people, continue consuming information from media, from social media, when our country and our army is executing wars at 2 fronts, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable, the plenary recess will be a short one. Thank you. Colleagues, I welcome you to today's sitting, whereby we are going to be receiving the tax and revenue bills and the draft budget estimates for the financial year 2025-2026. The parliamentary power of the past implies that the legislature is duty-bound to match planned government expenditure with appropriate revenue generation strategies. Hence, the tax and revenue bills as prescribed in Article 152 of the Constitution and Section 8 of the PFMA 2015, plus Rule 150 of our Rules of Procedure. So we are trying to ensure that indeed we work within the given deadlines. So far, so good. I know very many committees, and I think all committees had already started processing municipal policy statements. But now with the receiving of the final budget estimates, it will be much easier. It helps you to do a much richer report and makes the work of the budget committee even much easier. So I hope we can exhaustively interrogate these documents so that indeed we come up with the final budget estimates that we all appreciate. We want to give you enough time to look through these documents. We don't want your complaints of saying you didn't give us enough time, we were rushed. No, we want you to have enough time to scrutinize them. And therefore, after this session, today's session, we shall be adjourning to give committees time so that we don't be running plenary alongside our committee works. We want maximum concentration for members of the committees. It won't be a recess. It would be a plenary recess so that committees can continue fully working, and would urge on the sectoral committees, apart from committees which would be having like special assignments, but we want sectoral committees because each member at least is a member of a sectoral committee. We want all of us to participate in the budgeting process. Honorable colleagues, yesterday morning, various parts of the Lake Victoria Basin received heavy rains, which caused flooding in some places and subsequently impeded mobility, and we even lost livelihoods. I was checking in the media that we lost 5 and 7, and more people are injured. It was very, very unfortunate what happened yesterday. Such a climate-induced occurrences are a reminder about the need for responsible and sustainable environment and natural resource use by each and every one of us. At the end of the day, natural disasters do not discriminate. Whether you're looking after nature or not, they come for you. So let us be crusaders of environmental conservation and sustainable natural resource use. But also the Committee on Physical Infrastructure, you have some work you've been working on unplanned, poor planning, and I would say people have built in road reserves, okay, and all that. You've been doing some work. I don't know where you've reached. I hope you can interrogate this further when you're processing the municipal policy statement. But Honorable Chair, once you're ready, please, we'll be ready to give you space to handle this issue. Honorable members, I will evoke Rule 25(1) of the Rules of Procedure and vary the order paper to accommodate the tabling of a special audit report for the end of lease and assignment agreement between Umeme Limited and the Uganda Electricity Distribution Company Limited. I'll give details much more why I've done that when we come to that item. Now, colleagues, today I'm not taking matters of national importance. I want to remain focused directly on the issues on the budget paper. I will...
Honourable Speaker, I want to join you in condoling with the bereaved families. As of close of yesterday, 7 people had passed on due to the flooding that happened in various parts of Kampala and beyond. With your permission, sir, hopefully at some point we can observe a moment of silence for
in fact, I wanted to say that we can do it now. Okay? If we could do it now, we observe a minute of silence and then Rob can continue.
May the souls of the departed rest in eternal peace.
We were discussing the heat wave, which had become very problematic. Some colleagues here reported of deaths in their constituencies. People were collapsing and dying because of the extreme heat. And we're tasking government to deal with that situation, update the country on what ought to happen and so on. Now we are on the opposite side of the lane with very heavy rains that are causing flooding. As we have mentioned, 7 people died as of yesterday. Myself, in my constituency, I lost 3 people. 2 people in Mulimira zone, that's Bukoto, a 3-year-old child and an 11-month-old baby, another in Banda, and of course, different parts of Kampala. I want to implore government, to reach out to the affected families, the bereaved families. There are several that are now displaced. We are trying to find shelter for them in churches, in mosques, and so on, and take care of them from there. We are hoping that government comes in because many are not able to stay in their homes currently. They are still flooded. Others, were affected heavily. I hope that the Ministry of Disaster Preparedness, in conjunction with the Ministry of Kampala, Capital City Authority, will come in to intervene as quickly as they possibly can. But away from that immediate intervention, and I hope it will be immediate, Honourable Speaker, I think that government needs to update this House on what's happening to avert these happenings, because the causes are known. Poor drainage. We see buildings coming up in Kampala, every corner. There's different structures coming up. We don't know who approves them. Many of them have not planned for drainage. We see, Right Honourable Speaker, we have seen KCCA and government go after some poor people in areas like Lubiji and so on. But then there are powerful people that are not touched in the likes of Namamve, which used to be a water catchment area. But it is entirely gone. We are seeing factories, hotels, and so on, approved by government. So we don't know whether it is encroachment on the environment and on wetlands when you are poor, but when you're rich and powerful, it is okay. Because all of that is the effects that we are facing today. Our hope is that government can address these matters because it cannot be okay for some and not okay for all the others. And then this poor planning that is all over the place. Kampala is already too congested, so we keep adding many little things here and there. Drainage is not taken care of. We need to address these matters. Otherwise, we shall be here crying again and again, mourning, to no avail. Finally, Right Honourable Speaker, do allow me to request for response from government on a matter that is not related. Honourable Speaker, on the 31st of January this year, the Supreme Court issued a ruling that civilians have got no place under our military courts, the country's military courts. We pushed to see that, as had been directed, those files get to be transferred from the General Court Martial to the civilian courts. As we speak today, it has happened for some, Dr. Kiza Besigye, Hajobed Lutale, and we're now pursuing to see that they get bail because they deserve their freedom. But, Right Honourable Speaker, there is several other people for whom files have not been transferred. The likes of Yasin Machete, Sheriff Kalanzi, Agaba Anthony, also known as Bobby Young, and a plethora of others. their files have not been transferred, and we don't know why. We thought that government was going to move quickly to adhere to the Supreme Court ruling. Can we get an update? Because these people keep asking us, their families keep asking us, is government not interested in respecting the order of the Supreme Court? Are they not planning to? What exactly is happening around that matter? It's important that this matter is responded to, Right Honourable Speaker. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Chimosho. Then I conclude with the government.
Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker. Thank you, Right Honourable Speaker. I want to take this opportunity, first of all, to thank you for raising the concerns on the overflooding in Kampala. And regarding the issue that you raised on the work that we've been handling, we were majorly handling the Rugogo flooding, and the report is ready. So when you have us time, we shall table the report. But, Right Honourable Speaker and Honourable colleagues, this is the first rain we received, or second, yesterday's rain. And we can see the extent of the damage. And Right Honourable Speaker and Honourable colleagues, I want to assure you, the little time I've been in that committee, almost 60% of the work you see going around in Kampala has no approved plans. That has no approved plans. That one, whoever is interested themselves, they know. Two, it is not even supervised by competent engineers. Because the ones we have attempted to look at, we found those challenges. It's now very important, I think, Right Honourable Speaker, that the Minister of Disaster, because now it's Kampala, there is Kasese coming, there is Bududa coming, and many other areas. So, Right Honourable Speaker and Honourable colleagues, you can be sure that in this season, we shall be discussing the disaster on a daily basis. I think it's very important, Right Honourable Speaker, that the Minister of Disaster Preparedness comes to this House with a plan, the plan on how prepared we are for these disasters. Because yesterday was just, it was a sample. We are headed for more trouble. So I think through you, Right Honourable Speaker, it is very important that you give timelines to the Ministry of Disaster, or for that matter, the Prime Minister's office, to come to this House and prepare the country on what they project, on what they are prepared to do, so that we are not caught unawares. Yet, actually, we are aware. We are not caught irresponsible, because we are aware of what is likely to happen. Thank you very much, Right Honourable Speaker.
Honourable Chimosho, on the issue you've raised, I think it will be very important now for the sector committee to interrogate it further, because these are issues to do with funding sometimes and all that. So the Committee on Presidential Affairs should interrogate that deeply when they're engaging with the office of the Prime Minister. And then on the issue of the report, I'm going to cross-check with the clerk to see when we could get for his space on the order paper, if you have submitted it already. Let me first get a response from government to issues raised.
Colleagues, subject to your further guidance on the subject matter of what we are experiencing at the moment, I wish to put the following facts to the House. First and foremost, to condole with the families that lost their dear ones in yesterday's floods occasioned by heavy rain. Right Honourable Speaker, the Ministry of Water and Environment recently briefed the country comprehensively in two fronts. One, they explained why the 3 months of December 2024, January 2025, and February 2025, the country experienced dry conditions and high temperatures. They even went ahead to explain or project how the 3 months of March, April, and May would look like. I want to start with the past and come to the present. On the question of the dry conditions and high temperatures, they attributed them, 1, to natural factors, and 2, to human factors. The natural factors are scientific in nature. What I picked from them, number 1, was the influence of tropical cyclone in the Indian Ocean. That was the scientific explanation why the country was very, very hot in the 3 months of December, January, and February. Point number 2 was the position of the sun. And scientifically, they explained that during February specifically, the sun moves closer to the equator. And as we are all aware, equator directly crosses our country. That is why it was exceedingly hot. The other scientific explanation, Mr. Speaker, was what they termed as urban heat island effect, where they explained that cities and large towns experience high temperatures.
Government Chief Whip. You see,
Right, Honorable Speaker.
I'm sorry for interrupting, sir. Okay?
Yes.
Our issue is not the causes and what, okay? Our issue is the mitigation mechanism. Because all this you have repeated here on the floor several times. Our challenge is, when all these, the scientists knew were coming, what did they do to mitigate their effects on the population? That's, if you could just help us on that. Because I remember the Minister for Environment sometime back, and also Minister for Disaster, had brought all these issues here.
I'm right, Honorable Speaker. When we keep dashing to mitigation without tackling what are the root causes, we may be treating symptoms and not, in my humble opinion.
No, I said they had already been brought here, okay? The Minister for Water, for Environment.
Okay, with your permission, yeah. Let me alert the country that still the month of March, April, and May will be characterized, according to our scientists, by isolated thunderstorms, strong winds, lightning, hailstorms, heavy rains. This fact must be stated, Right Honorable Speaker. On the question of mitigation, because some of them are natural in nature, on the question such that we prepare, we need to prepare ourselves the worst. Right Honorable Speaker, as I speak, the ministry in charge of KCCA, Office of the Prime Minister, and the agencies that do help us when such disasters occur are meeting in order for them to come up with the way forward on what the country is experiencing. But I want to state that majorly it is attributed to natural disaster, partly also occasioned by our human indiscipline. That is why we will continue experiencing this. If it pleases you, you may guide for either Ministry of Disaster or KCCA to come and brief the House on what they have now agreed on as the way forward. But as I speak, all of them are under the interministerial coordination to ensure that something is done, especially to families affected by the heavy rains. But suffice to say, we also need to be champions of environmental protection as citizens of Uganda. That is where we have fallen short. We need to be champions of environmental protection. We have left undone what ought to be done, and we are doing what we needed not to have done. And the Bible says there is no truth in us. We also need as a people, to also pray. Right, Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
The Supreme Court ruling and implementation is raised by law.
May I request through you that the line Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs be accorded space on the order paper when the House resumes to give a brief on that subject matter. We may not be privy to the details of the processes from the time the Supreme Court came up with that ruling. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you said the plenary will be on recess. Our army is executing 2 wars in DRC and in South Sudan. And the reports keep coming through the media, including the most unfortunate one that we lost a colonel who was part of the fighting in DRC. But there are also reports in the international media accusing Uganda of using chemicals in South Sudan. You may have seen the video circulating. The procedural issue I am raising, Mr. Speaker, is when will you facilitate government to brief Parliament and the country on these wars? Because we cannot, as representative of people, continue consuming information from media, from social media, when our country and our army is executing wars at 2 fronts, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable, the plenary recess will be a short one. Give government time to prepare during that time. Once we resume, they update the House. It will be a short one. Honorable colleagues, next item.